For citizens.
Well, she was.
I don't know.
I said you with the cool kids. Well, you know, I'm not fooling around.
Good evening, everyone. It is 6:30 Monday evening, the 5th. It is time to begin our hearings. I could have anybody's attention. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for a moment. It's been quite some time since we've met. Over that time period, to call it a tragedy is sort of cliche, but 4 young residents of our community lost their lives in an unnecessary accident. There's really, I mean, the only hope that something good might come from this is that, you know, maybe when somebody says, you know, what's the worst that can happen? Well, this is the worst that can happen. So, just a moment of silence. Thank you. Clerk Brady, roll call, please.
Commissioner Raffato?
Here.
Commissioner Kruger?
Present.
Commissioner Lang?
Here.
Commissioner Vito?
Here.
Commissioner Papantos?
Present.
Commissioner Vogel?
Here.
Chairperson Horker?
Here, you have before you the minutes of the special meeting of May 15th, 2023. I need a motion for their approval.
So moved. Second.
Commissioner Papantos, second Commissioner Kruger. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Kruger?
Yes.
Commissioner Lang?
Yes.
Commissioner Vito?
Yes.
Commissioner Papantos?
Yes.
Commissioner Vogel?
Yes.
Commissioner Raffato?
Yes.
Chairperson Horker?
Yes. Citizen concerns and comments.
Not today.
All right.
New business.
Straight to the body of the meeting.
6A, consideration of a request for a Class L liquor license for Atlantic Aviation, Georgis Catering, for an event to be held at 1011 South Wolf Road on June 13, 2023.
Mr. Spondilis.
Thank you. As the title indicates, this is a request for a Class L corporate special event liquor license requested by Atlantic Aviation. They will be hosting a promotional event with NJets. This is a private reservation-only event estimated to hold about 50 people at their hangar at Chicago Executive Airport on Tuesday, June 13th. I would ask that consideration of this item be made with 3 conditions. First, submittal of a certificate of insurance that names the Village of Wheeling and Chicago Executive Airport as additional insured parties. Second, submittal of proof of Basin certification for all applicable employees. And third, payment of all associated fees. I believe that the petitioner is in the audience if you have any questions.
If there are no questions, I would entertain a motion with the move.
Second.
Commissioner Lang, second Commissioner Vogel. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Lang?
Yes.
Commissioner Vito?
Yes.
Commissioner Papantos?
Yes.
Commissioner Vogel?
Yes.
Commissioner Raffato?
Yes.
Commissioner Kruger?
Yes.
Chairperson Horker?
Yes.
All right.
B.
6B, consideration of a request for a Class D liquor license from RMPT Beverages LLC, doing business as SWEJ Wine and Liquor, for a proposed packaged liquor store at 208-212 McHenry Road.
Mr. Spondilis.
Thank you. As the title indicates, this is a Class D, which is a packaged liquor store license. They will be occupying a space formerly had by Wapagetti's Pizza. It is a currently vacant space. Again, this is a packaged liquor store only, and the village has last considered a packaged liquor license with the relocation of Binny's into our community. The petitioner is here if you have any questions, and should the commission consider this item positively, I would ask that the following conditions be added. First, passage of an ordinance by the Board of Trustees granting a special use for the subject premises. Second, passage of an ordinance by the Board of Trustees authorizing the creation of a new Class D liquor license. Submission of a certificate of insurance indicating liquor liability insurance for the establishment, payment of all associated fees, satisfactory background check results, and finally, submission of BASIS certificates for all applicable individuals. The petitioner in the audience, if you would, please.
Questions or comments? Motion to approve as conditioned? Was that
Vogel, I think.
Commissioner Vogel, second?
Second.
I looked right at him and said
It was
Commissioner
Rafato.
Vogel.
Rafatos.
It's fine. Second.
Sure, Commissioner.
Whatever.
Okay, who was first?
Commissioner Rafato made the motion. Commissioner Vogel.
Okay. Commissioner
second.
Vito,
Yes.
Commissioner Papantos.
Yes.
Commissioner Vogel,
Yes.
Commissioner Rafato,
Yes.
Commissioner Kruger,
Yes.
Commissioner Lang,
Yes.
Chairperson Horker.
Yes. Welcome to the village.
Thank you so much, sir.
That's all the business for the Liquor Commission hearing this evening. I need a motion to adjourn into regular session.
So moved.
Commissioner Kruger, second Commissioner Papantos. All in favor?
Aye.
Liquor Commission is adjourned. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Village of Wheeling for
Hold for 1 second.
June
Okay,
5th.
I got it.
Clerk Brady, roll call, please.
Trustee Vogel,
Here.
Trustee Papantos,
Present.
Trustee Vito,
Here.
Trustee Lang,
Here.
Trustee Kruger,
Present.
Trustee Rafato,
Here.
President Horker.
Here. You have before you the minutes of the regular meeting of May 1st, 2023. Can I have a motion for their approval?
So moved.
Second.
Trustee Vogel, second. Trustee Papantos, roll call, please.
Trustee Papantos,
Yes.
Trustee Vito,
Yes.
Trustee Lang,
Yes.
Trustee Kruger,
Yes.
Trustee Rafato,
Yes.
Trustee Vogel,
Yes.
President Horker.
Yes, you also have before you the regular minutes of the regular meeting of May 5th, 2023. I need a motion for their approval.
So moved.
Motion, Trustee Papantos, second.
Second.
Trustee Lang, roll call.
Trustee Vito,
Yes.
Trustee Lang,
Yes.
Trustee Kruger,
Yes.
Trustee Rafato,
Yes.
Trustee Vogel,
Yes.
Trustee Papantos,
Yes.
President Horker.
Yes. Any changes to the agenda?
There are no changes this evening.
Proclamations, congratulatory remarks. Chief Dunn, you have a special event for us this evening?
I do. Thank you, President Horker. Tonight, our Police Unity Foundation will be making a presentation, and by way of explanation, I want to let you educate everyone what our Police Unity Foundation is. It's the officers' fraternal organization. It's separate from their negotiating teams or the fraternal police or Metropolitan Alliance of Police. This is, the police officers themselves have created this Unity Foundation for the betterment of the residents and their interaction with it. They act with autonomy and they do their own thing, and it's always wonderful in my opinion. And tonight we have Detective Laura Joshko and Crime Prevention Officer Phil Kim representing the Wheeling Police Unity Foundation. Tonight they'll be presenting funds to the Special Leisure Services Foundation. This foundation, in collaboration with the Northwest Special Recreation Association and the Pursuit Program, endeavors to provide transformative recreation opportunities for individuals with disabilities, both children and adults alike. The funds being donated were generated through the efforts of the Wheeling Police Unity Foundation, which organized the sale of autism awareness police patches and online donations. By engaging in such endeavors, the foundation aims to strengthen the bonds between law enforcement and our community. It holds the firm belief that by uplifting the most vulnerable members of the village, significant progress can be made towards creating a more harmonious and inclusive society. With this contribution, the Wheeling Police Unity Foundation seeks to extend its support to the Pursuit Program, aiding them in their noble mission of positively impacting the lives of individuals with disabilities. And I'll leave it to Laura to introduce who she'll be the check to, and Phil is here for support and to take pictures.
Thank you, Chief Dunn. So with me tonight, I have Liz Thomas, and she is the foundation member for SLSF. If I'm getting, there's a lot of acronyms in this group. So we're presenting you a check for $800 that we used, as Chief Dunn said, from raising monies from selling our autism awareness patches this past April, and taking online donations. We will still be accepting online donations. If you ever have the urge to donate to the autism groups that we're trying to support here in town, if you just Google Wheeling Police Unity Foundation, we have a Square website set up, and you can make notes in the comments and let us know where you'd like that money to go to, and we'll make sure it goes into the proper hands. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. We have an amazing police department. I know I say it quite a bit, but I really do believe it. Thank you guys so much for everything you do and for this. Clerk Brady, citizens' concerns?
Yes. Citizen concerns and comments. Members of the public may address the board with comments regarding issues relevant to village business. No citizen shall speak more than 5 minutes without consent of the board. Members of the general public who wish to address the board must sign the request to speak form prior to commencement of the public meeting. First is Sue Stein.
Just as a reminder, this is a time for citizens to make their comments and express their concerns and for the board to listen. Neither board nor staff will be answering questions. Good evening.
Hi. I'm here to just continue what you were saying, Pat. I'm here to give kudos to our first responders. About 10 days ago, I didn't mean to get emotional. I had a situation at my home I was entertaining, and one of my guests had a medical emergency. And I called 911 and talked to the dispatcher. They got the basic information and then switched me to the fire department. And whoever I talked to, it sounded like you, Chief, but obviously wasn't. But he kept me on the line until everyone came and asking me questions, but the biggest thing was how calm he was. And here I am among my friends. We're all very nervous and upset about what our friend was going through. And he very calmly spoke to me and really helped me out. Stayed on the line until everyone arrived. Officer Manley was the officer who came. I don't know all the other guys' names, but they were awesome. They were so professional and calm. And I can't mention that enough because it was a really serious situation. My friend is alive because of the timing. They came in very quickly. It was within 4 minutes. And they took her to Northwest Community. And I like the communication because as soon as she got there, she told me there was a whole group of people waiting for her. I thought it was her family because she has 6 kids plus tons of grandkids. No, it was medical team. Huge medical team just waiting for her. And I just cannot thank our responders enough. It was awesome. Again, how calm, I'm not calm now, but how calm they were helped me be calm. And if that's how they respond to emergencies, that's awesome. So kudos to our first responders. Thank you.
Thank you.
Phil Mustachio.
Good evening. My name is Phil Mustachio. My wife Chris and I live at 3121 Jackson Drive in a house we built in 1987 in what was unincorporated Cook County and now in the village of Wheeling. I mentioned that it was unincorporated Cook County because back in those days we did not have this opportunity to give our opinions and to work through problems. Things went through the county and they just happened, and no matter what you did, they just happened. And in those days, we ended up with a 3-acre retention pond that was purchased by the village of Buffalo Grove for Buffalo Grove water. Did not help our storm situation at all, poured more water onto our street, and we suffered through it until the village of Wheeling annexed that area. That was not my favorite thing to do. When Wheeling annexed the section, I was not on board with that. But over the course of time, we've learned that we work well with, Wheeling, and they've done a lot for water retention in our area, and it's a better situation than it was now. Two things that I know. Number one, there's never been a petitioner that walks up here to this microphone that doesn't have an agenda that benefits himself. I know that. Number two, there's never been a case of a commercial real estate or commercial zoning going back to R1 residential. We have R1 residential in our neighborhood, in our area, and that's what it should be. Our community development department should be helping us look for proper contractors that can build single-family homes in that area. There'd be no reason in the world to change that zoning in that area for anything. I don't have enough intelligence to talk about water storage credits. I don't understand them. As Harold Washington used to say, he'd call it hocus pocus dominocus, which means look at my right hand because I've got you with the other hand. So I just want to let you know that, I mean, the village, the people that live there understand that the village has got their back. And we're hoping that however things go, that they'll have our back. And so that's all I've got to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mustachio.
Mark Coliander.
Good evening. 22 years ago, one of the greatest days of my life happened, 22 years ago today. That was the birth of my first grandchild. During that time, we were living on Jackson Drive. I thought it was a great place. We're going to have kids running around here, nice big yards. It was a beautiful thing. Well, times have changed, but we're still living in the same house. We're still zoned R1, which brings me to item 13, number F in the agenda, which says a discussion for a major site plan concept review for Sweet Flag Detention Basement at 2812 to 2822 Jackson Drive. What do we have to have a site plan for an area that is zoned R1? It's already zoned R1, like Mr. Mustachio said. There are empty lots, build a house. If somebody can't sell a lot to build a house in that area, it's too expensive. That's the people who own its problem. Now, we're gonna have a site plan review. What does that take? Well, I want to know what those take. So when is that going to happen? And are we going to have a who, what, where, when, and why? As far as I know, which isn't a lot, somebody wants to dig a hole and sell the rights to dump water in there from anywhere in the Des Plaines River Basin. So we're going to put water on our street. Ours is the Village of Wheeling Street for somebody who wants to buy water rights, and they could be living in Mundelein for all I know. You know, maybe it's a Mount Prospect gas station. I don't know. This is something we need to address. So whoever handles that kind of stuff, who, what, when, where, and why. This is very important. We've already have a business, maybe more than one, that is running in the R1 zone, and they don't follow the rules now. They don't follow residential rules. They don't follow business rules. Why change it and have somebody else not following the rules? Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Rich Godley.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Rich Godley, and I live at 3020 Jackson Drive. We've lived there for about 30 years, built a home there 30 years ago this November. And just to echo what Phil and Mark had said with the R1, obviously, no, it's R1. If it's R1, why in the world would we change it to commercial? And if we did, why wouldn't we change the Sanchez property? And why wouldn't we allow Sanchez to build a liquor store and a massage parlor there, because that could be commercial? We already have a hole in the ground on Jackson Drive. We don't need another one. We fought this fight 30 years ago when Shafkus was trying to ram their self-storage down Jackson Drive. And at that time, they said they needed to expand their self-storage down Jackson Drive because they were non-conforming. And if they did not change the zoning, or if you did not change the zoning, that they would not be able to sell their property, which was a lie because they did sell their property several years ago. Again, there is no need for more water on Jackson Drive. We have lived with flooding going across Jackson Drive for years and years. It's R1, that's the way it should stay. Thank you very much.
That's it, we're done.
Thank you, Clerk Brady. We have no staff reports, so consent agenda.
Consent agenda. All items listed on the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the village board and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless the board member or citizen so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the general order of business and considered after all other agenda items. 11A, resolution approving a one-year contract extension with Al Warren Oil Company, Inc. for the purchase of gasoline and diesel fuel in the amount of $315,000. 11B, resolution approving a contract with Interstate Power Systems for 2023 generator maintenance in the amount of $28,229.70. 11C, resolution approving a one-year extension on a previous bid contract for Patriot Pavement Maintenance for the fiscal year 2023 crack and sealing program in the amount of $39,998.22. 11D, resolution for improvement for under the Illinois Highway Code section 21-00091-00-RS, construction engineer for the Northgate Parkway improvement. 11E, resolution approving a joint funding agreement with the state of Illinois to provide funding for construction and engineering inspections for the Northgate Parkway improvement program in the amount of $269,500. 11F, resolution approving an engineering service agreement with Chastain and Associates LLC to provide construction engineering inspections for the Northgate Parkway improvement project in the amount not to exceed $80,727. 11G, approving a professional service agreement with Engineering Enterprises, Inc. for water system analysis in the amount of $99,640 for fiscal year 2023.
If there are no questions about the consent agenda, I need a motion for its approval.
So moved. Second.
Trustee Papantos, second. Trustee Kruger, roll call, please.
Trustee Lang,
Yes.
Trustee Kruger,
Yes.
Trustee Rufato,
Yes.
Trustee Vogel,
Yes.
Trustee Papantos,
Yes.
Trustee Vito,
Yes.
President Horker.
Yes.
New business.
Brings us to 13A. This is a public hearing. There are some very specific words which must be read for this, so bear with me. Lawyers listening. This is a public hearing for the public to make comments regarding the request for a 6B real estate tax assessment for 1175 Wheeling Road. A public hearing notice was published in the Daily Herald. Each member of the public shall have 5 minutes to make their comments. During this time, staff and the board will not answer questions. Comments should not be repetitive or argumentative. Are there any comments from the public about this issue? Going once, going twice. I would like a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Trustee Vogel, second. Trustee Papantos. Roll call, please.
Trustee Kruger,
Yes.
Trustee Rufato,
Yes.
Trustee Vogel,
Yes.
Trustee Papantos?
Yes.
Trustee Vito?
Yes.
Trustee Lang?
Yes.
President Horker.
Yes, which brings us to item B, Clerk Brady.
Resolution consenting to a Cook County Class 6B real estate tax assessment classification improvement and incentive agreement for the property located at 1175 Wheeling Road in the village of Wheeling, Illinois.
Mr. Clicker.
Yes, before you is a request for a 6B property tax classification for 1175 Wheeling. It's a 186,000 square foot building that was recently occupied last by Champro. It is in the process of winding down and actually is dead storage space. It's not used for active business functioning at this time. But it has not been vacant long enough, so it would need the finding of special circumstances for this sale to go through. The property owner, the contract purchaser does say they need the 6B in place. However, they do not have a tenant secured for the building as of this point, so they have agreed to enter into an incentive agreement with the village that we will hold the resolution of support until a time that they present an acceptable tenant to the village for occupying this space. With that, the action tonight will allow them to move forward with the sale of the property and purchase. And then when they do secure the tenant, we will release the resolution, which will then be presented to Cook County for the finalization of the 6B.
Mr. Clicker, I don't recall us ever doing something like this before. Is this new?
This is new. I do not like doing 6Bs in speculative properties, meaning we don't know who the tenant is for, because part of the process of a 6B is that it is to encourage job growth and job retention in Cook County. So with that, I had a discussion with the petitioner regarding would they be agreeable to an incentive agreement like that is proposed, where we would hold the resolution, and they did agree to that this would allow them to move forward, but it allows us to not have a property sitting vacant that has a 6B.
My problem is it's kind of, and forgive me, I'm going to do this anyhow, guys. In looking at this, it seemed like we were engineering the qualifications of a 6B to take place.
Yeah. Well, again, we can grant the 6B without the tenant. That is our prerogative to do so, to pass that resolution. However, again, I believe...
And I know we grant them a lot.
Right.
But it's after they've been qualified.
This property does qualify because of the amount of spending that they say they're going to need to do to improve the building.
$1,000,001.
Yes. So they are going to be improving the building and rehabilitating it in preparation of a tenant. So they have met the thresholds for the special circumstances. It's just that they don't have that tenant involved in there, and I'm uncomfortable just giving them the 6B resolution until that tenant is in place.
Yes. So now after I've indulged myself, Trustee Vogel and then Trustee Papantos, did you have something?
How long is this in effect for? How long before they have to? I mean, is it a year? And if they don't?
If there is a time frame when the board is uncomfortable that it's been sat too long, we could again, we hold it indefinitely until they present us with a tenant. If they don't present a tenant, obviously we don't bring it forward. If it has been an extended period of time with no action, we could revoke the resolution altogether.
So at any point in time, we could revoke it?
It won't be year. In this particular case, it's probably a matter of months.
Okay.
Trustee Papantos?
Yeah, is the petitioner present?
Yes.
Sorry. Okay, so you're looking at investing 1.1 million into this property?
Or more.
Or more?
But depending on the tenant.
Okay, how long do you think it will take to do the restoration?
Well, initially, again, it's been a pleasure to work with Ross. We've worked a lot together. The strategy here is to get the building up to code, okay? There's a lot of problems with the building. The roof is uninhabitable. That's where a lot of the money is going. And anybody who has looked at the property so far has no vision in terms of, what it could be. So we need to put these improvements in there post haste, Mayor. And
you guys will have complete control over whether or not you approve it by the tenant that's going to go in there. It'll be a manufacturing tenant. It will meet the qualifications of 6B. 4 decades ago, I wrote these with George Dunn with the Attorney General's office. So I'm confident that this building, it's 186,000 square feet. Wheeling is a place to be. Wheeling is a place to manufacture. You got a great job. Pool to draw from. All the jobs would meet the Cook County Living Wage Act. And, you know, we're excited about putting the improvements in there. Brookfield is a major REIT with, I'm here with Rob Moriarty from Brookfield, and I don't know, they have over 40 million square feet of industrial property.
And my question is going to the fact of whether or not there should be an expiration on the incentive. If we put an expiration on the incentive, but it's going to take you 6 months or a year to do the improvements, I don't think that's, I want to make sure that the expiration, it's going to be hard for you to rent out the building until the restoration is done. So I want to come up with a legitimate expiration on the incentive versus just saying, oh, a year, but you're still getting the new roof or whatever.
That's a great point, because even if incentives after 24 months, once they're granted, expire if there's no tenant with the Cook County Assessor's Office. So even if it was granted without having put any improvements in there, if you don't have a tenant within the property within 24 months, you don't have 51% occupancy, it automatically by.
But I'm still waiting for the answer to my question. How long do you think it'll take to do the improvements? It's just even a
8 to 12 months. I mean, these are major improvements.
Reasonable is 12 months.
Yeah.
And that's basically what I want to know.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're as soon as this closes, we're not dilly-dallying around. We want to get a tenant in there. You know, we have shareholders to satisfy. We need to get a tenant in there, and we're not going to just sit around, and we're going to market the property. We're going to push. And the vacancy rate in Wheeling is it's less than, I was talking about, it's going to be 3% before. I mean, this is a place to be. It's not like it's.
We agree.
And that's why I'm up here, advocating for the client. But a year is fine. I mean, Mary, I think that's reasonable. I mean, we want to get it rented tomorrow. We do have some interest in it, but the improvements, you know, the tuck pointing, the water, I mean, it has to get up to code. A lot of people don't have that vision on a 186,000 square foot building.
And I just wanted to get some sort of a time frame because I didn't think it was going to happen overnight. And welcome to Wheeling, and I'm glad you're taking interest in the building. So worst case scenario, a year for the improvements, and then hopefully, and it will be a manufacturer is who you're going to market to, or for a tenant?
Of course, in order to meet the 6B threshold, you have to have a, you know, manufacturing distribution or.
We always like a 6B with, you know, some sort of retail side too, but
we'd like
keep that in mind.
Of course.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Trustee Papantos. Trustee Rufato?
So we're landing on a year here. I'm just following up on Trustee Papantos' comments. So we're going to land on a year here on the 6B. If they don't have a tenant by then, improvements are done, then.
It's actually, as Mr. Liston was saying, it's actually what the county is. If they don't act on it within 2 years, it's automatically revoked. If we would like to set a shorter time frame, that's your prerogative.
As President Horker said, this is one of the first times we've done this.
Yes.
So I'd like to do a year, just to ensure that we're doing this right.
I think we're, if I'm going to interrupt you. I believe this side of the table was talking about a sunset on the time to initiate to start the 6B.
Correct.
But then there's another 2 years of the 6B.
I'm talking about having a tenant and everything in a year. I assume they're looking for tenants right now that they could have something In place,
they don't want
signed,
to
sealed, delivered, and they also do the construction.
But I think they're talking about waiting a year just to start. They're talking about waiting a year just to begin the 6B.
Oh, waiting a
It's
year.
a year to complete construction,
Right.
right, up to 24 months to get a tenant.
Right.
We will not release the resolution to the county until they have a tenant.
Right.
The 6B tax program will not begin until we give the county the resolution.
Sorry,
So-
I'm chuckling because we don't want this to run concurrently. We would like this to run consecutive.
Right, so a year to build out is what they're looking for, I think, and then 2 years to get a tenant. That's what we're.
2 years from today to
2
get
years
the
from
tenant,
today, correct.
theoretically.
Okay, so we're not changing anything.
No.
We're really not changing anything, except we have a firm date as to when the construction will end.
Firm date for when construction will end. And I would suggest, if it's more comfortable, because it'd be easier, put it into the agreement that they have 24 months to get an acceptable tenant. This way we have something to point to in our agreement that they've agreed to, we've agreed to, and we can show to the county. I'd suggest you put it in, even though I understand what the attorney is saying. It's belt and suspenders.
And I have no problem with that. However, in order to meet that threshold, you have to have a 51% occupancy on the building in order to have the incentive classification click in, okay? So I would then say, if we're going to put that in the agreement, council, that we would also include that we would have a reasonable period to cure in terms of occupancy into the property.
I don't want to renegotiate this agreement here.
I'm not renegotiating, I'm just,
Right.
I'm dovetailing off of what you just said.
I mean, 24 months is 24 months. What are you looking for to cure? You're looking for longer than 24 months.
I'm not looking for any additional, I'm just saying that if we use good faith and reasonable efforts to make all these, complete all these improvements, I mean, we don't want a vacant building, okay? That's not part of our portfolio. Do you understand?
Right.
Okay, so my issue is that we need to get time for the improvements. This thing is uninhabitable, this building. This roof is ready to cave in, all right? And that's where a lot of this $1.3 million is going to go right off the bat. I mean, as soon as we close, we're going to pull permits, we're going to move forward. That's not even an issue. So we don't want a vacant building. We got shareholders to satisfy. We got, we want to get that 6B, and it's part of a portfolio, and, we need the building occupied.
I understand what you're saying, but you've got 24 months
Yeah.
to both complete the construction and get an acceptable tenant. That would be what I would suggest we put into the agreement. Motion to amend with that change. And then if it's not happening, they could always appear before us again.
Yeah.
Seek some relief.
That's fine.
I want to pull the board on that issue.
I honestly don't think it's going to be that long based on all the, I'm up here a lot, and we've been cooking like Betty Crocker in terms of filling up these vacant buildings here.
Happy to have you cooking. I'd like to pull the board on a 2-year time limit, as described by Trustee Farrell, as described by council.
Got a demotion.
To add it, Trustee Vogel?
Yes.
Trustee Papantos?
Yes.
Trustee Vito?
Yes.
Trustee Rufato?
Yes.
Trustee Krueger?
Yes.
Trustee Lang? Yes, so that's going to be added to the conditions. Trustee Rufato, we left it with you. Did you have any further questions?
Nope.
Are there any other questions or comments?
Just a comment. You're putting $1+ million into this building. I trust that you want it to be utilized quickly. So
Looking for a
I'm all
return.
for it.
We good to go? Want to make the motion?
So moved.
Second, please.
Second with the as amended.
Motion as amended. Who made the second?
Aye.
Trustee Papantos? Roll call, please.
Trustee Rufato?
Yes.
Trustee Vogel?
Yes.
Trustee Papantos?
Yes.
Trustee Vito?
Yes.
Trustee Lang?
Yes.
Trustee Krueger?
Yes.
President Horker?
Yes, welcome to the village.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, counsel.
Thank you.
Thank you, trustees.
Item C is also a public hearing, so bear with me. This is I'd like to call to order the public meeting for the public to make comments regarding the request for a 6B real estate tax assessment for 406 to 432 Diens Drive. A public hearing notice was published in the Daily Herald. Each member of the public shall have 5 minutes to make their comments. During this time, staff and the board will not be answering questions. Comments should not be repetitive or argumentative. Are there any comments about this issue? Once, twice. I would like a motion to close the public hearing on the Diens Drive issue.
So moved.
Trustee Vogel, second.
Second.
Trustee Kruger, roll call, please.
Trustee Rufato?
Yes.
Trustee Kruger?
Yes.
Trustee Lang?
Yes.
Trustee Vito?
Yes.
Trustee Papantos?
Yes.
Trustee Vogel?
Yes.
President Horker?
Mr. Clicker, you are on a roll this evening.
Yes, again, before you is a request for a 6B, this time for 406 to 432 Diens. It is an approximately 25,500 square foot industrial building. That's one of our wonderful split lot zones. That's I-2 and I-3. It has been completely vacant since April of this year. It has had vacant units, however, since 2018. Again, it's a very similar situation. New contract purchaser wishes to take the building, invest into it, bring quality tenants into it. To do that, they need the assurance that a 6B will be available to them. So they are, again, willing to enter into the incentive agreement with us that we will hold the resolution until a time that they have acceptable tenants.
Stat board. Trustee Papantos.
Yes, is the petitioner?
Mr. Liston.
Yeah, probably. So you know how this will go then.
Let's take, you're spending a lot less, so let's take a wild guess.
It's like
The real
Groundhog
question
Day.
is who pays portal to portal? Never mind.
Groundhog Day, right?
Yeah, so how long will it take to do the improvements, and what type of tenants are you looking for?
Tenants that meet the requirements of, under the Cook County Class 6B incentive, for sure. This is Mike Klulo from VK Acquisitions. He's an asset manager as well, too. This is a little bit, this is a lot different animal. It's like 1/4 the size of the other one. There's 4 units. There are a lot of, we've already gotten $300,000 in bids on the property. We got to upload the dock doors are not operational. There's concrete problems. There's levelers that need to be fixed. I mean, it's, again, both of these REITs that are up tonight are not in the business to have a vacant property. So we're going to need a little less time, actually. We'll need the same, the time to fix it and the time to lease it. And we just want to be in Wheeling, quite frankly. I mean, it's a great place to have industrial properties, and I mean, we could put the same parameters of a year and then 24 months, like council was talking about before.
Any other questions, Trustee Papantos?
No.
Okay, would anybody like to see, I'll poll the board. Do you feel we should add the same condition that we added to the previous item? Trustee Rufato?
Yeah, I mean, we're doing it for one. Let's
Trustee
be
Kruger?
consistent.
Yep.
Yes.
Trustee Lang?
Yes.
Trustee Vito?
Yes.
Trustee Papantos?
Yes.
Trustee Vogel?
Yes.
I concur. So we will add the same 24-month language, amended conditions for
1 year to complete improvements, 24 months to
Yeah,
provide
I
an
would add
acceptable
it.
tenant.
If there are no other questions or comments, I need a motion to approve as amended.
So moved.
Trustee Rufato, second. Trustee Vogel, roll call, please.
Trustee Kruger?
Yes.
Trustee Lang?
Yes.
Trustee Vito?
Yes.
Trustee Papantos?
Yes.
Trustee Vogel?
Yes.
Trustee Rufato?
Yes.
President Horker?
Yes. Again,
Thank you for your time tonight. Thank you.
13E.
Hold on.
If I may, I think staff's takeaway here is, should we do any of these prospective 6Bs in the future, we will include that language as we discuss with the petitioners, so that by the time it gets back to you all, that language will be included in your legislation. Thank you.
Good idea.
Well, I took notes.
Just,
I know what you mean.
clerk.
13E, ordinance granting special use approval to permit the operation of a packaged liquor store at 208 through 212 McHenry Road, SWE Wine Liquor, docket number 2023-17.
Mr. Clicker.
You have the special use that was heard by the Plan Commission at their May 10th meeting and received unanimous approval, a recommendation for approval. There were two conditions placed on it. One of them was actually addressed by the Liquor Commission action earlier tonight, which was approval of a special use is contingent upon the petitioner receiving a Class D liquor license from the Village Liquor Commission. And the other condition would be is that the petitioner shall submit a complete application for business license to the Community Development Department upon demonstrating the petitioner and the business operation complies with all requirements of Chapter 4.74 of the Wheeling Municipal Code. A business license shall be obtained prior to the operation of the packaged liquor sales establishment at the subject location.
Questions or comments? To my left, to my right. If there are no concerns or comments, I would be looking for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Trustee Lang, second.
Second.
Trustee Rufato. Roll call, please.
Trustee Lang,
Yes.
Trustee Vito,
Yes.
Trustee Papantos.
Yes.
Trustee Vogel,
Yes.
Trustee Rufato,
Yes.
Trustee Krueger. Yes. President Booth.
Yes. Item F.
13F, discussion, major site plan, concept review, Sweet Flag, Detention Basin, 2812 through 2822 North Jackson Drive.
All you, Mr. Spondelis.
Thank you. Before you this evening is a concept review, as the title indicates, for a detention basin on Jackson Drive. A concept review is a formalized process in the Village of Wheeling, and part of that would require that I read a little bit of an introduction so that both the petitioner and the public understand exactly what is and what isn't happening this evening. After I read that brief introduction, I will hand it over to Community Development Director Clicker, who will provide a project overview and introduce the petitioner, who will have their own presentation. After that, the board will be able to ask questions. And at the end of the conversation, there will be a single question asked of the board, and that is this: is the board in favor of the major site plan concept for 2812 to 2822 North Jackson Drive, which will require a rezoning of the property at issue and or a text amendment in the village's R1 district? The current request is for a non-binding approval of the proposed major site plan concept. The feedback by the board will be used by the development team as a guide in the preparation of the formal concept plan. The outcome of this evening shall not constitute a formal approval or denial. The decision by the board tonight is non-binding and shall not prevent the applicant from moving forward with a formal application. Director Clicker.
Yes, before you is a request from HSG LLC to look at the proposal of constructing a storm store project, which is an MWRD concept, which allows developers to purchase stormwater credits for basins that aren't necessarily or aren't on their property, but do provide a regional benefit. The basin in question is referred to as Sweet Flag Detention Basin, and it would provide for approximately 20 acre-feet of stormwater volume, which is approximately 6.5 million gallons of water, at a depth of approximately 10 feet. Staff has met with the petitioner on several occasions to discuss the proposal, and village staff does not support the proposed project at the subject location since the principal objective of the basin is private commercial use. That's how the stormwater are sold for a profit for the corporation that is looking to build this basin. That is not permitted in the current R1 residential zoning. The basin's stormwater credits cannot be guaranteed to provide any direct stormwater capacity within the village, nor would the basin improve the existing stormwater conditions along Jackson Drive immediately. In addition to the commercial nature of the proposed, it is inconsistent with the comprehensive plan designation for single-family residential along Jackson Drive. With that, if this were to be considered, again, we would need to look at a rezoning of the property in addition to any site plan or engineering stormwater project proposals that go along with it. With that, the petitioner is here and would like to make a presentation.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Meg George, an attorney with the law firm of Ackerman, LLP. I am pleased to be back presenting before this board for this exciting project. I am here tonight representing RES, Resource Environmental Services, which is the nation's largest environmental restoration company. They work with both the public and private sectors on environmental mitigation, stormwater, water quality, and climate and flooding resilience. It is not often, as a zoning lawyer, that I get to work on a project that is contributing in a positive way to environmental mitigation, and definitely not often that I get to contribute to a project that is providing more green space. I frequently bring my children to Wheeling, to the Forest Preserve most weekends, and I know the importance that this village places on green space. I am proud of the impact of this potential project for this area. I am joined tonight by Aaron Delawala from RES, Bill Loftus from Spaceco, and my colleague Matt Ali from Ackerman. The proposed project involves creating a naturalized detention basin at 2812 to 22 North Jackson Drive. This project would be a part of the Chicago Metropolitan Water Reclamation District Storm Store program. This is an exciting new program with the Nature Conservancy and the Metropolitan Planning Council. We believe the proposed project would provide enhanced protection to the lakeside villas and Mallard Lake and would greatly reduce the flooding on Jackson Drive. In addition, we believe this project is in conformance with the village's comprehensive plan, as this area is designated as single-family residential, which allows open space as a special use, and would further one of the goals of the comprehensive plan, which would be to acquire new open space within a floodway or floodplain area and to make productive use of a flood-prone land. I will now turn this project over to Aaron, who will further describe the project, and our team is available for questions at the conclusion. Thank you very much for your review.
Good evening. Thank you all so much for hosting us this evening. I'm excited to tell you about this project. As Meg introduced, we think that this project can really add a lot of value for both the residents in Lakeside Villas and on Jackson Drive. RES is, as Meg mentioned, RES is an environmental restoration company. We really look for the projects that can provide a win-win for a community. We're not only looking to add more green space or restore nature, but also looking for communities that may have a need for that nature. And in this situation, using a nature-based solution like a naturalized detention area to address flooding that has happened in this area in the past. Our company is kind of unique. You know, we aren't just a consultant and we aren't just a construction company. We're really investing in environmental projects from the very beginning and finding land and all the way through design and permitting, through construction and implementation. And for this particular project, RES would be maintaining this project in perpetuity. So we would be making sure that the aesthetic of the site is beautiful for the residents. We've suggested incorporating a walking path and benches so the village residents can enjoy this space, but we would also be ensuring the functionality of the stormwater service that it's providing. The water that's going to be captured in this basin would really only be water that's coming from this area. So water from other parts of the village or from other parts of the watershed where people are purchasing credits, that water will not be brought to this site. This site is only capturing the water that is already flowing through the site undetained. The function of the storm store program is really a strategy to finance this project. So we are able to use the sale of credits in other parts of the watershed to invest in a green infrastructure project in this location. And I think the idea behind MWRD's creation of this pilot program was looking for innovative ways to solve flooding problems. And this is one way where we can gather funds from many parts of the watershed and deliver a specific large benefit to an area that has historically experienced some flooding. Sweet flag is a native plant to the area, so in case anyone was wondering kind of the reason behind that name. You know, our vision is that this basin, although there is an existing basin on Jackson Drive that has a turf grass design, that is certainly one option for detention basins, but we believe that this site and the village residents would be better served with a naturalized detention basin using, oh, okay. Sorry, thank you so much. I can skip ahead to a rendering. There we go. So our vision is that we'd be using wildflowers and native grasses to enhance the aesthetic of this basin and really creating an amenity for the residents. Skip ahead to some of these slides. So just in terms of kind of the scale and kind of Res's ability and our kind of track record with maintaining projects. So we have restored hundreds of thousands of acres across the U.S. and particularly in Northeast Illinois. The Res and our partner companies have been active in this area for over 40 years. We've been stabilizing stream banks, restoring wetlands, maintaining the forest preserves of Cook County, really working with a lot of public and private partners to enhance the green spaces that our communities, you know, appreciate so much. So in looking in trying to identify this site, I think it's helpful to think about, you know, what kind of criteria we used to settle on this spot on Jackson Drive. You know, why here? And really what we looked for is older residential communities that may not have built the stormwater detention facilities because they were built, you know, 50 or 60 years ago before there were strong regulations around stormwater detention. And so in this community, several of these neighborhoods were built before the detention requirements were in place. And so there is stormwater that is in excess of the current capacity. And then the second thing that we did after kind of doing our initial GIS analysis and looking for those types of areas was look at the village stormwater master plan. And the village stormwater master plan identified that this area was a potential candidate to solve the flooding on Jackson Drive and Lakeside Villas. And so that was a confirmation that this could be a good site for a detention basin that could help address both the flooding issues that this community is having and also add some green space. This kind of summarizes what the aesthetic is that we're hoping to achieve. On the left, see more of a standard turf detention basin, and on the right, more of a naturalized detention basin using those wildflowers, and I think providing a really beautiful area and something that will attract pollinators and birds and things for residents to appreciate. So at this point, you know, as you all have heard from everybody, this is a concept at this point. We're still working through, you know, the design pieces, and we would expect that we would refine the design over time, incorporate comments from the village, and try to, you know, put a finer point on all of the specifications, the grading plan, the volume of the basin, the specific, you know, features for residents. But really at this point, looking for your feedback on whether or not this is a project that the village would support. We know that there has been a flooding issue here and that there have been some improvements. Lakeside Villas has made some improvements in their basins. The village also invested in some pumping in this area. And so one of the things that we'd like to do as this project advances is to rerun the stormwater model to account for those changes and to really assess how can this basin best serve the residents. And the exact, you know, acre feet and the design as it's currently created is subject to being refined based on village comments. So we have some more homework to do on our side, but I think at this stage are looking for confirmation from the village that this is something that would add value and that you all could support if we are to move forward with addressing your comments. So I will at this point let Bill Loftus provide a little bit more details on the engineering specifications.
Good evening. I'm Bill Loftus. I'm with Spacegoer Civil Engineering Firm in Rosemont. Actually started my career here in Wheeling, spent my first 10 years at a company called Seton Engineering Company, so very familiar with the flooding issues associated with Wheeling, at least historically speaking. I promise not to do too much hocus pocus with respect to the engineering issue. As staff correctly pointed out, we've got 20 acre feet of storage proposed, and as Aaron correctly stated, this is a concept level. So just keeping this very brief and simple, the May 2nd comments that staff provided us were, I found to be fair and reasonable. I think they will result in a reduction in the overall volume we'll be providing. I would guess if you were somewhere in the neighborhood of, 20% reduction in the total volume to accommodate those staff comments. But I think there's opportunity here to balance the economics of the storm store, the downstream benefits, as Aaron pointed out, and how the water is collected and modeled is very important. And also freeing up downstream infrastructure that's currently burdened by overflows. There is a benefit to providing nearly, 6.5 acre feet is 6.5 million gallons of water in a reservoir to downstream property infrastructure. So that's it on the engineering side, and I'll here to field any questions.
My turn? Return. Awesome. Mr. Farrell, do you remember when we talked about this about 12 years ago?
I do. It's been a long time. A lot has happened since then.
It has. This is one of the seeds, in my mind, that sprouted into the tree of one of my mantras for law that says, it doesn't have to make sense, it's just the law. So, let me get this straight. This is going to benefit Lakeside Villas, Mallard Lake. That's where the runoff is going to come from to fill the pond. But you're going to sell rights to the space in the hole to people from anywhere else in the watershed.
I'll let others chime in as needed, but yes, so the concept of storm store allows for developers throughout the Lower Des Plaines watershed planning area to offset the amount of detention that they have to put on their project area. So they are still required to detain the 10-year storm event on their property, on their developable area, but they can reduce the amount of detention between the delta, basically between the 10-year and the 100-year storm event. And so by doing so, increase their developable area. So somewhere else in the watershed, they may be able to get more space for development by purchasing a credit instead of putting all that detention on their site. And I think the interesting part about this is that their water is actually probably downstream of where this location is.
Right.
So MWRD's preference is that projects in the headwaters are selling projects, they're detaining it in the headwaters, whereas in its current condition, it would, flow overland and kind of go into the storm sewer as it's currently, designed. We're detaining it here to basically offset, activities downstream.
But you're basically selling space in this hole to somebody anywhere. And it's going to only benefit the people around, even though it's...
So we're trying to look for areas that have historically experienced flooding and say, could additional detention in this location solve a flooding problem here and finance that with credits being sold elsewhere in the watershed? It is a very interesting and unique program that is in its pilot stages.
Yeah.
So there have been 7 or so existing pilot projects, and those are in the slide deck, and I think are interesting projects where communities have said, this is an opportunity to install green infrastructure in our community and offset the cost of a project that we'd like to do anyway, but we can, basically reduce the cost to ourselves through this program.
Fascinating. Trustees, questions, comments? Trustee Rufato, then.
So you mentioned that you'd capture water from the area. You mentioned Mallard Lake. How is that done? Are you going to be constructing things from Mallard Lake to this detention pond?
So there is, Mallard Lake's detention basins are interconnected to Lakeside Villas. So their water flows through Lakeside Villas detention basins and then currently are discharged just west of Jackson Drive. And so what we would be doing is installing a sewer pipe under Candlewood Court that would essentially convey the water from Lakeside Villas, which would normally flow, if the Lakeside Villa basins overflowed, it would go overland to Jackson Drive. And so what we're doing is moving it into a sewer pipe under the road to discharge into this basin and hold it there until the, peak flow event has ceased.
All right. Then, as President Horker said, you're using credits throughout the other areas of the watershed, but that's really the benefit to the village is the supposed reduce the flooding in Lakeside Villas, Mount Lake, and Jackson Drive. But then we're taking away our one property that is zoned that way. You mentioned that this company will maintain this property in perpetuity. So what if this company is sold? What if your company is sold? What would happen to that?
Great question. So we, in selling credits, we account for the maintenance cost, going forward into the future, and that's bundled into the credit price. And what we do with that maintenance cost is create a non-wasting endowment. So we have a pool of funds that is set into this endowment, and every year that will issue a payment which will cover the maintenance costs. So it's kind of like an annuity payment. So even if, our company was to go away, there is a funding mechanism that will issue money from that source every single year forever. And what we typically do with these projects is, in lieu of, if RES was no longer in business for some reason, the village or one of the Lakeside Villas HOA could be set up as the beneficiary in the event that we were to go bankrupt, which hasn't happened and is not, in the past we've had hundreds of mitigation projects with this structure, and but it does provide that protection in the very rare event that could happen.
So you mentioned, last question, you mentioned another number of projects. This one here is the Village of River Forest. Have you proposed anything in any of your other projects in R1 districts?
That's a good question. So far, I think a lot of the projects have been in, like this one, for example, is in alleys. So I would assume that's zoned residential, but it's technically within the alley. Our first storm store project was the Peckney Park project. It was built in Riverdale Park District, and so that was not R1. It was a project we constructed. We weren't involved in the design. So this is the first one in the R1 zoning. And I think what our thought was that the project would be in alignment with the character of the residential area, and that it would look and function as a residential stormwater basin. So although we are using Storm Store as the mechanism to fund the project, what we're really putting in place and function is a residential stormwater facility.
And so can this basin be used when it doesn't have water in it? Can it be used or is it always wet?
So the current design contemplates that it would typically be a dry basin. And so it could, the design can be altered so that it could be wet if it was functioning more in coordination with the Lakeside Villas basins and the water level was kind of even throughout those basins. But in the current design, it is considered to be a dry basin. And so it wouldn't be like the turf grass potentially could be recreational space within the basin. This is really intended to have those wildflowers so people could walk around it but not necessarily go in the basin itself.
Because the Park District has the basin where they play soccer, right? And that's dry, so they have soccer there in case we ever have a storm. It would just flood into soccer, and when it drained, go back to soccer. But this, you're saying, is not something that you could change to have recreational use?
We could alter the design to be a turf grass detention, yes, if that was preferred by the village.
All right. Okay. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you.
Trustee Kruger?
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you for coming here. I have the distinct honor of saying that I have lived on Jackson Drive for 60 years. I have seen the progression of this street in a way that many have not. Even my neighbors who were so kind to come here today and express their opposition to this. I'm certain that you've been told how we lovingly refer to the existing detention basin on the street. I will not say that publicly here today. I'm curious when you say maintenance, because I know that I have certainly, after becoming a trustee, worked with the village staff and our neighbors in Buffalo Grove about maintenance of their current turf design. it was not maintained for a long time. I believe that's a 26-acre-foot basin that has brought certainly more than wetland plant life, animals, bugs, when it wasn't maintained properly, mosquitoes. It's not pleasant. When I heard about your idea, I really felt that this would potentially be a second one of those on the street. So I'm still vehemently opposed, but I do want to hear what your maintenance would consist of. And my other question, before I make one more comment, is it too early to ask what the sale price for those acre feet to others in the Des Plaines watershed would be?
Yeah, I'm going to let my colleague Lucas speak to the maintenance components because that's definitely more his expertise. But I think the price of detention credits, I think it's very market driven. So it kind of depends on what a developer is looking at for what detention costs on their site. My understanding is that that can range quite a bit from $100,000 to more than that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I certainly have familiarity with detention credits that the village gives to developers in this town. So
Yeah.
it's a very lucrative business that you're proposing.
Yeah, and yes, and one thing I think would be good to note, it just related to that, I mean, I think that there is a recognition that the village would potentially desire to use some of these credits to incentivize development in Wheeling and potentially provide a regional detention benefit to future development here. So I think that's something we're definitely open to exploring if that's of interest. So I'll let Lucas answer the maintenance question.
Yeah, so thank you. Name's Lucas Lilly. I'm the general manager for Resource Environmental Solutions. Essentially, under the concept that we have in front of you, the initial maintenance period would be pretty intensive in the front end to ensure that the native vegetation is established. So that does involve, in the first few years, significant mowing events, herbiciding events like of invasive species and everything. So that's a 3 to 5 year process really to establish the right vegetation, native vegetation mix on the site. Beyond that, then it's periodic mowing of the site to once you get enough kind of thatch built up of the biomass, you would mow that back down and that type of stuff, but it would allow it to regenerate. And then it's inspections of the actual stormwater facilities, meaning so the piping work, the overflows, all that type of stuff, any repairs needed to be done on those as well. And that's kind of as as conditions warrant when those replacements would have to happen. So.
Okay, there was some talk about Lakeside Villas, some conveyance of their water into this basin. How does it come out of the basin and where does it go?
So currently, it's envisioned the overflow, or essentially the outfall would be on the drainage ditch on the west side of Jackson Drive. I don't know, Bill, if you got more context there, but essentially, it would be designed to fill up to a certain capacity. At that point, there's an overflow, and then essentially we would re-mimic the surface flows once the detention basin is full capacity. So. And Bill could probably answer that question better as the engineer than I.
It's similar to, I think, how the Buffalo Grove Basin is currently run. There was a time when we used to get a 100-year flood, it seemed like every 2 years. And that basin would fill up with Buffalo Grove's water, and that water would then be opened up like a river down Jackson Drive before Jackson Drive was improved. And it would flood out my neighbors, and it would be a problem. I think, I don't want to get too deep in the native weeds on this, but I do want to, I am concerned about how your presentation stated that there would be, flood improvements experienced for Lakeside Villas, Jackson Drive, Mallard Lake, but staff does not believe that to be true. So that is confusing to me. I would like to close my time with a comment that since I have been a trustee, which is 10 years now, this village has spent millions of dollars, and Lakeside Villas has spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to keep water, mitigate our stormwater, and move it out of this village. I certainly don't want to see more water, and I don't want us to change the zoning of an R1 residential neighborhood of custom homes on very large lots where at one time, people were telling me that no one would ever build on Jackson. And I can tell you that I have, in addition to many of the people here, and in addition, 4 more homes that have currently, 2 that are currently being built and 2 that are recently occupied. This is a prime, as far as I'm concerned, area for residential, and I don't want to see any more commercial dipping north into Jackson Drive. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Krueger. Trustee Papantos?
Thank you. On the maintenance, I guess I'm going to go back to it with the native vegetation. How are you going to prevent invasive species that are going to continually end up in there? We all know it happens.
Absolutely. So I think this is the world we live in every day, is, you know, managing for those invasive species and proactively keeping those species that you don't want in the basin out. And so, as Lucas mentioned, the first couple of years are very intensive to basically eradicate things that may be kind of latent in the seed bed. As you are, you know, doing restoration, things might pop up. So we'll be doing a very proactive maintenance regime in the very beginning. And then part of what we have committed to in our meetings with staff is writing in some of the commitments that we would make, and then that can be incorporated into our MWRD permit. So the commitment of how we're going to manage those invasive species and make sure that that's not a recurring issue. So even if that's, you know, we expect that this is something we would have to maintain, you know, if not annually, multiple times a year, to go out and make sure that the basin is keeping, we're keeping that mix of desirable vegetation.
Yeah, because your pictures look really pretty, but we all know that's not what it's going to look like in the long run, and we're going to see, you know, buckthorn or whatever growing in there.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, I mean, very much our expectation is that we will be responsible for keeping that buckthorn out of the site.
The site is heavily wooded right now, correct?
It is.
I have always been taught that trees prevent flooding, and trees are good to flooding. So now you're going to take out the natural trees and try to do something that I don't want to see it become just this hole sitting there. And that's what I'm afraid of, or this basin. Hole's a little strong, but.
Right, and we would propose to put in some trees along Jackson Drive between the basin and Jackson Drive, so there is still a wooded view from the street. I think we did do a habitat assessment, including a wetland delineation, and what we found on site is that although there are some desirable tree species, there also are a number of invasive non-native tree species there. And I think that the way the water is currently flowing to that site, it's ponding, but it's not necessarily, the site's not designed to hold water. There may be some infiltration, but most of the water is running off the site.
Where is the water that's flowing to that site coming from right now?
It's coming from Lakeside Villas. So there is the Lakeside Villas, there's a kind of a topographic break from Lakeside Villas to Jackson Drive. So some of the water is just collecting at the bottom at that low point on Jackson Drive in this lot, and the lot that's directly north of the lot. I don't have the exact exhibit up, but and then there's also the overland flow route from the Lakeside Villas Basin, dumps through a pumping station. And Bill, you might be able to elaborate further on kind of how that water is flowing from Lakeside Villas into a stormwater pipe.
Yeah, so just for clarity, we're not adding any water. We're only accepting the water that falls from the sky and comes from the upstream property owners. So there's no new water being trucked or rerouted to this location. So you have 6.5 million gallons of water being proposed in a hole. You're absolutely right. Trees do fight stormwater, but there are 2 types of stormwater. There's a rate control and there's a volume control. Those trees help with volume control. What does that mean? That means the rain that Mother Nature gives us is either filling soil voids, being taken up by root absorption, and not hitting your engineered storm sewers, which are only designed to convey, staff would concur, at the best case scenario, a 10-year storm event, okay? But the volume control, or excuse me, the rate control now is the hole, is the basin itself. That's gonna take the big storm event, that overflow that was being discussed that pours out into Jackson, is now pouring in to this 20 acre foot facility and then being released at a controlled release rate. So there's not an engineer on any level that's going to tell you if you give yourself that much volume to take that much water, you dig yourself a big enough bathtub, it is not going to benefit. It's absolutely going to benefit. The little hocus pocus about this right here is what storm events do those people benefit from? And then what's the duration of that storm event? So that's the deal that we haven't worked through at a concept level. That's what we have to work with staff. That's what we have to work with the neighbors. We have to determine what is it? What's the sweet spot for the downstream residents and the adjacent property owners that we can provide the greatest stormwater benefit and maintain the economics? This is a true public-private partnership. And while this is a pilot project here in Illinois, I can tell you I sat with the Metropolitan Planning Commission drafting these documents because we as engineers have built detention basins all over these towns that do not function properly. They're too small, the restrictors are not maintained, and they're not providing the benefit of the downstream property owner. Finally, we have a mechanism called Storm Store. We can build regional basins, which we all knew work more effectively. And we need basically land and people with courage in these two watersheds to say, this makes some sense from a stormwater management standpoint. Erin emphasized or talked about in her initial comments, and I don't think we emphasized it enough and it was missed. She talked about developments that occurred prior to 1972 which had no stormwater detention. Ask your staff how many times in my career since the mid-1980s we've amped up the storm events, right? I can remember, technical paper 40 was the 100-year storm when we were working right here in Wheeling. And that 100-year storm event was 7 inches of water. What is it now, in excess of 11? We are adjusting to what Mother Nature is giving us, and that's why these kind of projects are really important.
Thank you.
Hang on, who did I have next? I had Trustee Vogel next, and then you, Trustee Vito.
Most of my questions are answered, but you keep mentioning the benefits to Mallard Lakes, Lakeside Villa, et cetera. Have you talked to any of those parties?
Yes, so we did approach Lakeside Villas because we would need an easement under Candlewood Court from Lakeside Villas to convey the water from their basin. And I think, it was an initial conversation, but I think they're supportive of this concept because they see the benefit that this project would do to reduce the flooding that they experienced in the past. The improvements that they made in dredging their existing basins added 2.3 acre feet, but there's still 20.2, or I guess 20.7 acre feet undetained from Mallard Lakes and Lakeside Villas that is currently in, this 100-year storm event or even a lower storm event that would be overflowing the basins.
Okay. And you mentioned that you're going to have to install piping. Who's going to pay for that?
We will pay for the entire cost of the project.
There's no cost to the Lakeside Villas or?
There's no cost to Lakeside Villas or the village.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Vogel. Trustee Vito, and then Trustee Lang.
So I guess this is more for Attorney Ferrolo or staff. If we went ahead and approved this, what would the actual zoning be?
We'd have to take a look at what would make sense. I think it's going to be a rezoning, potentially a text amendment. It could be both, could be one or the other, but I can tell you this kind of a use by a private entity is not allowed currently in an R1 district. We would have to make some change. I do think, again, we'd have to look at whether it's a rezoning or just a text amendment, but it's going to be one of the two.
What would make the determination?
Our evaluation of the code and what makes sense in terms of language. A text amendment would be language added to the R1 that would allow for this kind of use. So we would craft, for public hearing purposes, wording that might allow this type of use in the R1. The Plan Commission would consider it. Public would come out and be able to give comment. Ultimately, that would make it up to you We would have to evaluate whether or not it would be just a text amendment or a rezoning would be necessary as well. I'm not, at this point, it could be one or the other or both.
And this is Meg George, zoning attorney for RES, and it would be our preference to stay the R1. We're not looking to rezone unless the village would prefer that, but we wouldn't be looking to stay R1. We believe that this being open space, it's consistent with that zoning, with the text amendment language as discussed.
Okay. That's all I have, thanks.
Thank you, Trustee Vito. Trustee Lang.
So my question's for Mr. Kaplan. Hello there. So how is the property tax determined for that current detention pond?
I mean the Buffalo Grove?
Yes.
Basin?
Yes.
Yeah, it's probably tax exempt.
Yes, blown.
Right. Tax exempt. So would this have a similar situation or not?
This being privately owned would not be tax exempt?
Okay. So how would you guess the tax would be figured out on this? Would it be obviously vacant property? Is there anything unusual with the tax determination?
Yeah, I would have to look into that and get back to you. I'm not sure how the county would treat that.
If the only guidance we would have at this point would be is recent examples of properties that have sold for uses other than what they are now, AKA the Bears buying Arlington Park. The county came back and said that the Bears purchased that property for $195 million, and that's what it was going to be assessed at. They've negotiated a lower rate on that, but I do believe the purchase price would be the dictating factor for the county assessor at this point.
Fair enough. That's all I had.
Thank you, Trustee Lang. Mr. Clicker, what science, what engineering, or maybe this is CALP, whichever one of you has the math and figures, give me a recent history of flooding on that street. Give me a recent history on, well, you haven't been here that long.
No, I haven't. We've both been here for about 3 years.
Oh, God.
From an engineering perspective, any detention could have a benefit for managing stormwater. In this particular use, it is an issue of the threshold of the rain event. So a high-intensity, short-duration event where typically neighborhoods can back up. There may be a benefit with the addition of detention based on a threshold of the nature of the rain event. So as you just heard.
So if a lot of rain comes down, there's going to be water standing.
Correct.
Got it. But in the time that you've been here, have we had a 100-year rain in the time that you've been here?
No. And that is about the threshold that we're guessing. We don't know exactly. We have a new bulletin that came out for Bulletin 75 that delineates what is considered a threshold rain event. We would estimate that with the 1.7 additional feet of freeboard the lakeside villas would get from this development.
1.7 acre feet.
1.7 feet of freeboard would benefit them on about a 100-year storm event. Mallard Lakes, however, does not have, based on the design of the development currently, any conveyance pipe, and so we can't determine whether there's any benefit to that development. Lakeside villas would have the benefit at that 100-year, very, very rare rain event. We have not seen, since Lakeside Villas has done their private improvements to their detention facilities within their HOA, they have not flooded since.
And for example, the early rains that we had early in the spring this year, we were working with this proposal, and I did ask Director Kalp, would those rains, would the basin as proposed, would it have held water? And we do not believe that the water would have ever even gotten into those basins, into this basin, based on the levels that we saw at the Lakeside Villa current facilities and with the amount of rain that we had.
But none of the, just thinking back, none of the modeling we currently have takes into consideration any of the improvements we've made over the last, correct, 5-6 years.
And the plan that they have referred to, the 2009 plan, is purely a draft, if I'm not mistaken. When they keep on referring to.
Oh, the stormwater master, the plan where the proposed improvements are identified, it was a draft plan, but it was still identified as something that would assist the area. The project does not help Jackson Drive at all. It helps Lakeside Villas in the most severe rain events, and it would help the Mallard Lakes.
But that was that was with the modeling that was done before any of the new improvements.
Correct.
Does it hurt Jackson Drive at all?
It does not harm Jackson Drive.
So it's,
Although the water is conveyed through the west drainage ditch, so it does add, it would add.
It would add volume to what's currently going through it.
Yeah, on those severe rain events. It would take a lot of water for the water to be conveyed from Lakeside to the new detention.
Could I respond to a couple of those points?
Sure.
So I think the point about water being added to Jackson Drive, I think that water is already flowing that direction. So it's just, first it would be detained and then it would be released to the place it's going in its current condition. It would just be released at a slower rate after hopefully the peak storm event has passed. So I think looking at the design to refine it further about how we can manage that issue is definitely something that we think is warranted. I did want to point back to the September 2008 flood event. That event was 8 inches of rain over 3 days, and that was less severe than a 100-year storm event. So that event did not rise to what would be categorized as a 100-year storm. And Bulletin 75, it's been mentioned a few times, that is the latest standard for stormwater detention accepted by Cook County and MWRD. And they've increased the amount of rainfall for a 24-hour period by an additional inch, and have noted that there's a 26% chance of a 100-year flood happening in the next 30 years in any particular location. So impossible to predict, and I think as Commissioner Kruger mentioned, you can have 200-year storm events in a single year, you can have one every 10 years, you could have one every 200 years. It's a little bit of a game of probability. I think what we are, accounting for and what MWRD is accounting for in the Bulletin 75 is that precipitation trends generally are increasing and more frequent and sort of more intense events are expected to occur. So I think the exact design of this and whether or not it can benefit Jackson Drive is something that we'd like to evaluate in the next stage of design. And also running the model, as Commissioner Horker mentioned, just refining to account for the improvements that have been made. The data that we were working with is a little bit outdated, and so it's worth updating that stormwater model to make sure that we're designing the basin to add as much benefit as possible for both Lakeside Villas and Jackson Drive. So we fully acknowledge that we don't have all of the answers today. We're kind of just looking for feedback that this is something that would be considered if we do refine it at that next stage.
One more. Is there something that binds this type of use to like a subsequent purchaser? Say, whatever you wanted to sell to XYZ.
They're selling.
What?
They're selling the space in the hole.
No, I mean the actual lots. So if you want to sell this basin to XYZ drainage or whatever, the next generation of your type of business, is there something that binds you, or can you sell it to, Mary Kruger because she wants to buy another lot to build for her family or something, for a new house, and she
Oh,
can
no, I
fill
want
it in?
another hole.
Yeah.
These basins will have a perpetual easement on them, so they can't be removed in the future.
So once we do basin, it's always a basin.
That's correct. And that's an MWRD requirement, essentially saying if we are going to create detention here, we can't then later remove it.
President Horker.
Trustee Kruger.
Thank you. Director Kalp, you weren't here in 2013, but I believe there was a massive rain event in Wheeling at that time, enough that I think a lot of Illinois was declared a disaster area. It's really the last time that I have seen the standing water and the flooding on Jackson. Since then, we have made improvements, like I said, in having Buffalo Grove better maintain their basin, their turf basin. They pulled out all the old, 30-year-old drain tile out of there. They pitched it. The release is a lot better, and it holds the water properly. We spent money on storm drainage pipes, big ones, little ones, swales, we do a lot of televising. We improved Jackson Drive after the road not being paved for 28 years, raised it in the low area. This past spring is the first time since this massive rain event in 2013 that I recall seeing any water on Jackson Drive at all that went over the street. And even that, I wasn't picking out tadpoles like I used to when I was a kid, but I'm just trying to point out that we have made massive improvements in the storm mitigation of the Lakeside Villas and Jackson Drive area. I'm not sure what more help you can give us with a pretty floral basin. Thank you.
What am I missing, Mr. Spondilis? Why does selling space in a hole sound so redneck to me? I can say that.
Oh, dear. I'm not sure.
Don't answer that, John.
Right.
I'll take the hit. What am I looking at?
No,
here?
I don't want to take sides. I think, however, what Mr. Kalp articulated earlier about staff's position related to what we believe is the limited benefit to the Village of Wheeling versus the idea of bringing additional, versus the idea of holding water in an area that we have spent a significant amount of money to convey away from said area.
To make buildable.
Is the challenge that staff is trying to overcome. Pardon?
And to make it buildable.
And to make it buildable.
Have we beaten this horse? Should we take a vote? Anybody else got questions or comments? Left, right, shaking our heads. There's a proper question that I'm supposed to ask.
Is the board in favor of the major site plan concept for 2812 to 2822 North Jackson Drive, which will require a rezoning of the property at issue and/or a text amendment in the village's R1 district?
Clerk Brady.
Trustee Vito.
Can I vote present? I'm really torn on this. I'm normally pretty convicted.
I'll come back at you.
Something's weird about it, but I don't know. It was a very polished, nice presentation, and just something's strange in that area. So
I'd like a yes or no.
No.
Trustee Papantos.
Yeah. When I first read this, my feelings went directly to the comprehensive plan, which said this is R1. Now I'm hearing we could keep it as R1, which tears me, but I am concerned what it's going to look like. And I know you've promised us that it will be maintained. I'm concerned what's going to happen in 15 years. Right now I'm a no. Sorry.
Trustee Vogel.
No, we've spent too much time and effort to make this work the way it is today and leave it as residential.
Trustee Rufano.
No.
Trustee Kruger.
For Trustee Vito, it's a very nice area over in the southwest.
I'm aware. I like it over there.
And I'm a no. Thank you.
Trustee Lang.
No.
President Horker.
No. Mr. Spondilis, they have instruction?
Yes. I think they know what the next steps are should they decide to pursue them.
Thank you. Thank you for considering us. No, thank you. Official communications. Volunteers are needed to serve on the Board of Health Senior Commission and the Plan Commission.
We have openings on 3 of our commissions, the Board of Health, the Senior Commission, as well as the Plan Commission. All the information can be found on our website, including an opportunity to apply for those appointed positions.
Do we have a party coming up at the end of the month?
It took me a second to figure that one out.
Was
In fact, we do. We have our Rock and Run the Runway event, which is going to be held on June 24th of this year at Chicago Executive Airport. Bring your friends, bring your family, good food, good bands,
Food trucks.
excellent fireworks. Food trucks, yes.
Awesome. Anything else from staff? Oh, I'm sorry, Trustee Papantos?
Thank you. Just want to take a moment to congratulate Manager Spondilis. I believe Wednesday is your anniversary date? Tomorrow is your anniversary date. Manager Spondilis has been with the Village of Wheeling for 30 years. I think this shows a level of commitment and dare say love for the village, that, he cares what's happening here. He's witnessed a lot of fights and, comments and people saying, you got to do this, you got to do that. But I think part of the reason that Wheeling is what it is today, and people want to come here, we witnessed it with 2 6Bs today, is because of his work and certainly staff. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Trustee Papantos. Anybody else wants to make the meeting longer?
I can talk some more.
No? Okay.
No.
We do have the bills to pay. I need approval for the bills for May 11th through the 31st of 2023. If somebody could make that motion.
So moved.
Second.
Trustee Vogel, second Trustee Kruger. Roll call, please.
Trustee Papantos?
Yes.
Trustee Vogel?
Yes.
Trustee Rufano?
Yes.
Trustee Kruger?
Yes.
Trustee Lang?
Yes.
Trustee Vito?
Yes.
President Horker?
Yes, we do have an executive session this evening for the purposes of appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of a specific employee or employees of the village. Towards that end, I need a motion to recess into executive session and adjourn the regular meeting.
So moved.
Trustee
Second.
Kruger, second. Trustee Papantos, roll call, please.
Trustee Vogel?
Yes.
Trustee Rufano?
Yes.
Trustee Kruger?
Yes.
Trustee Lang?
Yes.
Trustee Vito?
Yes.
Trustee Papantos?
Yes.
President Horker?
Yes, I would like to adjourn the regular meeting, and we'll call executive session into order at 8:20. We're going to do it here?
20.
Yes.
8:30.
You guys have to leave.
How about 8:15?
Yeah.
3 minutes?